lots of questions so far. So I think we should get the panel on. I think it's time. Let's meet them. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hey, everyone.
Hi.
Welcome. Welcome to GopherCon EU 2021. It's gone well. How are you all doing? Rebecca, nice to see you. What's been going on?
Good to see you too. Hi. Excited to talk about Go tooling and Go IDE stuff.
Yeah. Well, we have lots of questions for you on that, so don't worry. Julie Q is also here. Hello, Julie.
Hi.
How are you doing? We've met before, haven't we?
Of course. Yeah, we actually got to attend GopherCon EU and do this in person a couple of years ago, so that was fun.
I know. Well, that was strange when we were in person. I mean, what's that going to be like when we do that again? It's going to be dead weird, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. We'll see. Hopefully it happens soon.
Yes. We have also Katie Hockman here, whose name is a little bit... It's not very inclusive. I think it should probably be Hockperson. What do you think?
I think I'll legally change it.
You're going to get it changed properly, yeah. Yeah, you can't illegally change it.
No,
It wouldn't
I have to
count.
legally change it, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Katie, you're a tiny bit quiet. Maybe you could...
Oh, I am. Let me move closer to the mic.
Yeah, that'll probably do it. I'm
Let
not...
me know if it's is it better? Can you hear me now?
It's better. I just want to make sure everyone at home can hear. Yes. Suzy's also here. Hello, Suzy.
Hey, Matt.
Welcome to GopherCon. How's your day been going so far?
It's been pretty good. Excited for this panel.
Yeah, we've got lots of good questions from the audience, so it's going to be great. And Hana Kim's also with us. Hello, Hannah.
Hi, how are you?
I'm not too bad. Welcome. Where are you dialing in from today?
New Jersey, outside of you.
Yeah, that's a perfectly acceptable answer, New Jersey. Although they don't seem to have the best internet connection. Oh, you're back. You froze a little bit, or maybe you were just keeping really still. To try and
I think my computer is underpowered for this probably. Yeah, I need a new computer.
Okay. Well, if anyone could send Hana Kim a computer.
Great, thank you.
That's what you are. Okay. Well, we can start with our first question. Actually, it's a pretty good one. What is the Go Tools team? Who's on it, and what do you do? Who wants to tackle that one?
I can jump in on that, I guess, to start us off. Basically, the Go tools team is kind of just a very broad term, I think, for the people that work on Go tooling in general. So a lot of disparate parts to it. Historically, we've worked on things like the Go command team used to be part of the Go tools team, and also just the IDE team. So now we're sort of, the groupings are changing a little bit, but we had the VS Code Go extension, which Hana is the tech lead of, and we have Go Please, which is the editor backend that we have for VS Code and Vim and Emacs and different editors. That's part of the tools team, and I guess and the web team is also part of tooling. So like Julie's team. So I think lots of different smaller subgroups that are all kind of collectively one large tools team.
Yeah, so it's interesting because Go, when it was first around, it's always had good tooling. Like it was almost where you felt like other languages tooling came later. With Go, it always felt like they sort of knew tooling was going to be important, and they paid attention to it early, and it's kind of kept that tradition really. And the fact that there are so many people now working on tools, I guess, is testament to that. Maybe we could go around a bit and just hear what you each work on or focus on, or what you've recently just been focused on. Suzy, why don't you kick us off?
All right. I work with Hana on the VS Code extension, and I'm currently focusing a lot on the debugging support for the extension and in general.
Great. So that's where you can interrupt your programs and step through them piece by piece and watch what's happening. Things like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. To help you be able to find, your bugs in your code and see, yeah, essentially that, inspect what's going on interactively.
That must be hard with Go routines, isn't it? Because how do you have to like stop them all and then you're watching them all, or you just keep one going? How does that work?
So the debugging support works by you have to stop all the Go routines at one time, but you can look at a specific Go routine and keep paying attention to just what's happening in that Go routine pretty easily
Right,
to
yeah, that makes sense.
simplify that a bit.
Because otherwise, that would be kind of really difficult to keep up with, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And Julie, how about you? What have you been working on recently? It's
Yeah,
like a
so I've
stand-up
been,
list, isn't it?
I know, I've been working with
What did you do?
Go web team. So we've been, and our primary focus has still been on the Go package discovery site. So that's something that we launched back in the end of 2019. And then since then, we've really just been iterating and adding new features based off of the feedback that we've been getting from the Go community.
Yeah, and it's really useful stuff, and we already start using it. For the docs, for the other the package stuff, it's really good and really useful. So this is great stuff. Katie Hockperson, what have you been doing recently?
I've had it's not a nickname I've had in my life. It's, I like that.
Not everyone's as woke as me.
Yeah, I guess not. So I'm on the Go security team, and so that involves things like triaging vulnerability reports. The team also does like crypto features and TLS features and various just security features in the standard library every release as well. My main project focus has been fuzzing, which I know, Matt, you and I have talked about on a podcast and yesterday. And it's basically a form of automated testing that can automatically find inputs that can basically crawl your program in order to try to find bugs and panics that you might miss otherwise, kind of edge cases and things like that. So that's been my primary focus. And before that, I was the tech lead of the module mirror and checksum database. I worked with Hana on that one.
That's great. Yeah, fuzzing, I think, is so interesting. I think we're going to hear a lot more about it over the next few months, actually, because it's getting integrated properly, isn't it, into the standard library?
Yeah. So there's going to be right now we're doing all of our development on just a dev branch, and there's going to be basically a beta ready version of that. It's not going to be in the Go beta, kind of different. Basically, just telling everybody like this is how you can run it, and this is how you can check it into your repository. And then hopefully that is a way for people to start experimenting with it a little bit more, giving more feedback about the usability of it, and then we can kind of see if that design is working out for people. And then at that point, hopefully we can merge it into master and make it part of the standard distribution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. And Hannah, welcome. Maybe you could tell us a bit about what your focus has been.
Yeah, so I'm the lead over the VS Code Go plugin. And basically, my focus is to integrate the great tools Rebecca's team and Suzy and other developers develop, like, for example, the language server, Go Please, and the debug adapter, like Suzy and other dev, and also dev team actually worked on. And also recently, we've been working on some like securing VS Code Go plugin in the sense that it actually invokes a lot of like different tools, and we want to actually protect users from running arbitrary tool or like causing some side effect, unwanted side effect. So that was my current focus, and also we are working on some UX and UI policing work. Yeah, so that is my focus.
Yeah, very cool. I'm interested in that because when we first kind of had Go, we didn't have any of these tools, and so you're kind of writing in an editor that would try and help by just guessing, by just looking at things it's seen before and giving you hints, but it wasn't very helpful. And now, as Go Please keeps evolving, and it's nicely integrated into the tooling. It's just like you really start to take it for granted, and you can't really imagine how we did it before. The autocomplete stuff, even that is just such a simple thing, but is just so powerful. So yeah, thanks to everyone that's contributing to that. These tools really do affect our productivity in a very positive way.
Yeah, actually, probably I think I will have a chance to talk more about this, but I didn't use VS Code or more intelligent tools to help me developing Go, and now I cannot imagine myself developing Go without support from these tools. So yeah, glad to hear that you enjoy that too.
Mm. Mo, what's another question we've had?
All right. So I guess now the next question is that there is a kind of a catch-22 going on here, where you are the Go tools development team, and we as the Go programmers, or we use Go and we rely on those tools. But you as the Go tools development team, what tools or IDEs do you use, and how do you go about that?
I think a lot of us sort of, we dog food our own products. We use our own stuff. So I can't speak for everyone, but I've been using Go Please since before it worked at all. So I've been I often will break my own editor setup. But yeah, I use VS Code with Go Please and the Go extension. That's pretty much all I've really needed.
You used Go Please when it used to be called Go Please. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. No, in the early days, I would often break my own setup constantly, and the earlier tools were also fantastic and worked really well, before Go imports and Go Fumpt and all these things were always around, and Go Code as well. They were all great and they worked really well, but yeah,
that's true. Yeah, how about you, Suzy? What tools do you use?
Yeah, similar to Rebecca, I also use VS Code and the Go extension in VS Code to write my Go code. And yeah, I've had a great experience with Go Please. So thanks, Rebecca, for that.
Does anybody not use VS Code?
I don't. I use Vim. And depending on I do use Go Please, and depending on which computer I'm on, I either use Vim Go or Go Vim. So thanks to both of the maintainers for that.
Well, that depends if you're using your MacBook or your Book Mac.
Exactly. Yeah. You got to keep it consistent,
Yeah. That's great. And so there are good tools that integrate with that, aren't they? With Vim, and if there are people are Vim users, you still can use the language server.
Yeah, definitely. If you use Vim Go or Go Vim, I think both of them integrate with Go Please. But Rebecca can probably talk more about how that actually works.
Yeah, no, the language server just immediately if basically any editor client that supports the language server protocol can integrate with Go Please. And so Go Vim is interesting. It's so Vim Go, I think, is historically the more popular plugin. I think it's one of the more popular plugins that has existed. It was written by Fatih. And so that one's very popular. And so what Billy Cleek, who's the current maintainer of the plugin, was doing was just sort of slowly transitioning the different features to use the Go Please version of the feature. So I think now it might be fully integrated. Whereas Go Vim is created by Paul Jolly, and it's a pure Go Please plugin. So basically, the only thing that it has is Go Please features. So I think they're two kind of interesting. Yeah, they're both very good plugins, and I think they work really well. But yeah, Go Vim is slowly gaining a community of users as well.
Yeah, the language server that API is amazing. When you think of Go and other languages like object-oriented languages or Rust functional languages or even JavaScript, in my head they were all so different that it would be difficult to describe them in the abstract. But that's really what the language server is, isn't it? It's an abstract description of that, such that the IDEs can plug in and write one integration that then, as long as there's a language server for that language, supports all of them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And Hana is like a bit of a purist too, and you can probably speak to that too. 'Cause it's like you also don't have to use tools for Go to be possible to write too, which is kind of neat. I don't know if that can be said about every language.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, in fact, I know people that really don't use any tools. Still, they sort of just prefer the raw. I mean, they must use the Go tool to build it. Otherwise, I don't know what they're playing at. But assuming, beyond that, they don't, and it's kind of just a personal preference.
Yeah, actually, that was me probably. Yeah, like I started using Go 8 years ago, and for 5 or 6 years, I didn't use any plugin. I didn't use any tool, even though I worked closely with the tool team before joining VS Code Go. Like I had my own shell script, like to switch between different Go versions or setting up environment, and I refuse to use any tool. Like I just want pure Vim. And then now, like things changed. Yeah, right. So
nice. Hana, were you the one who used Acme before?
No, I'm not like that. I just used Vim, like VI, Vim, or like even I disabled the color syntax, and I thought everything is just distracting. And then I think at some point I was pair programming with one of my teammates, and then he was begging me, please use some modern IDE, please. And so okay, and then I switched it to Golang. I think back then, the setup required some time, but like it was a completely different experience after 5 years of working with Go, right? And like now I could search, I could actually see the reference, I could like a variety of things. But I still depend heavily on all these command line tools. Yeah, it's a kind of like a habit. And then now I use VS Code and VS Code Go plugin. And I'm really happy user of VS Code.
That's a really nice story when it comes to pair programming, because that's the thing about pair programming. It's not just that you're both working on the thing. You do see how other people work. And usually I'll notice something magic just seems to happen on the screen. And that's where they know some kind of key combination that I don't know. That's how I first learned you could do paste without format, which, by the way, should be the default. I shouldn't have to contort my hand into some kind of copy and paste claw in order to just copy text without all that formatting as well. It's a separate issue, but it's one I feel very strongly about. It's interesting because I saw that Rob Pike doesn't use a fixed width font. So maybe not all of the practices you'll adopt, but there may be some things that you do. So another question we have from our audience, what information should I look for when choosing dependencies, and how can package.go.dev help?
I'm guessing that's for me. So I think that when I think about the reason that we built package.go.dev is because this question of how do you choose your dependencies is really tricky, and there's like so much information to look at. But I think that when we were building the site, the way that we really bucketed it down was like 3 main groups of signals. So there's popularity, quality, and stability. So popularity is probably the most straightforward one. It's really just a social signal that tells you are other people also using this package, and if they have, it's probably a good sign that they've done some of the work that you're about to do, looking at the package and whether or not they want to pull it into your site, into their own project. And so on package.go.dev, the main way that we kind of help you with this information is there's an imported by account to tell you sort of how many other people are also importing the latest version of this package. I think when we think about quality, it's really just like when you look at this code, does it look like code that you feel comfortable including as your own project and really taking it on as sort of like, this is my code also. And so some ways that you could do this is really just looking at the source code itself, looking at whether or not it's well documented, are there tests? And so if you go to package.go.dev and you see that there's no documentation at all, or there's really little documentation, or it's not clear, that's probably going to be a good reflection of sort of the experience you might have working with this package later on. And same with tests too. Like there's a source file section on every package page, and so you can just take a quick look and see like, is there any files here that look like a test file? And if not, that's also another quality signal that you might want to take into account. And I think the last thing is really just stability. And so stability kind of comes along with modules and thinking about sort of, is this author not going to break me over time? So is there like a history that this package will remain stable, and can I expect that when I upgrade, things will be okay? Can I expect that security vulnerabilities will be fixed? And so today on the package site, in the right sidebar, will tell you like if a package version is tagged and is also a stable version, to really just highlight those module conventions. But some of the features we're actually working on this year is really to bring out more of those stability signals, such as security vulnerabilities and API reliability over time. So that's kind of some of the ways you could use the package site to help you.
That's interesting. So are you programmatically checking for kind of stability of the API?
So that's actually something that we want to work on this year. But right now when programmatically, it really just means like we're looking at the version and we're saying like, is there a tagged version that's V1 or above? And so that is like a module convention for whether or not the author is trying to indicate to you that this is stable. And so if you're looking at a V1 or plus package and you're noticing like functions are get deleted from version to version, it means that they're really not following these conventions.
That's interesting. But does that matter if we've got Go modules where we're tagging to specific releases?
Yes, it doesn't necessarily matter. Say like I'm using this current package version, and so you can expect reproducible build because of the Go module proxy. But say I'm using like function hello in version 1.5.2. And then I go to version 1.6, and all of a sudden it just disappears. And so now all my code doesn't compile anymore. Like, what should I do? I guess I would need to downgrade. But what if 1.5.2 had a security vulnerability? It seems like I'm in like a stuck situation. And so those are kind of the things that you really want to think about with stability. And so that's why it's so important for authors to sort of keep symbols from version to version. And this is actually, there's a convention in Go too to mark your identifiers as deprecated. So it's not like once you've introduced an identifier, you're stuck with it forever and there's nothing you can change about it. If this is something that you actually feel like, you don't want your users to be using, you can put like a deprecated comment. And that's actually something will also surface on package site so that new users aren't using these identifiers.
I see. So you're going to check the comments for that word, or are we going to have a new way of marking something as deprecated?
Yeah, we're gonna. So right now, like because we display the documentation anyway, you'll just see the word deprecated. But one of the things that it's pretty easy to miss if there's a lot of documentation. So one of the things we're working on this year is actually just to make the UI much cleaner. And so it's really clear when you're using this, this is the set of API that the author wants you to be using if you're just coming to this package version for the first time.
So will they be just still in the index as normal, but marked, or would they be perhaps moved somewhere else so that you can kind of get rid of that clutter?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've actually been talking about this issue a lot on the issue tracker, and there's pros and cons to both. I think that right now the strategy we're going to is to leave them in the index, but also when you're looking at the actual page, sort of hide the identifier and have it collapsed. And the reason to not move it to a separate section is really just because if a user is used to say I'm using like the database package and I see query, and I don't know that query context is maybe the function I should be using instead. What happens if I'm looking for it and it's not there and I don't know it's deprecated? You're kind of like, where am I supposed to find this identifier? And so working over UX team, that was really the recommendation that they have. And so we're going to try that out and then iterate if it doesn't seem to be the right solution.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. And it's great to hear that you engage with proper UX on this stuff. And you can kind of tell you are because of how good it is, I think.
Oh, thanks.
All right, so the next question comes from Jessica Green, and this question seems to be popular amongst the commenters. Any plans to improve the UI documentation or document of the pprof web tool?
I think I'm the one who need to answer because I was the maintainer of the pprof tool too. Yeah. So the answer is no and yes. So so whatever is like the pprof tool is maintained by a separate team. Like we basically like vendor the upstream pprof tool. And so we don't have a specific plan like to improve this UI. But we also have like a but we have like a plan to include the pprof like a UI inside of VS Code Go so that people can actually access this feature. This is really, really powerful and useful feature, like more easily through the editor. And yeah, we are not there yet. It's just a plan. But, and also another thing is like for documentations, I think we need a lot of help from community because, like we are really familiar with this tool already. So we don't know what is missing. So the actual input and contribution, like it needs your help.
That's a great point. I'm really pleased you said that. And anybody out there that wants to contribute to open source but doesn't feel like they can yet in code, documentation is a great way to do it, and it's always very welcome, isn't it? Yeah, pprof, having a pprof UI in VS Code is probably going to be a bit of a game changer because I think it is such a powerful tool, and thank you for maintaining it.
Yeah, I heard that the Goland has this pprof feature already, like for many years, and people really love it. And yeah, I really, personally, I want to have it. Yeah, this is kind of like my favorite tool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Goland is, of course, it's a paid thing where VS Code is free. So that's one thing. And it used to be called GoGland. So I think they I still haven't forgiven them for that. Okay. Next question, Mo. Anything on the list standing out? Mo, you're muted, sir. It's the classic.
Yep. The classic.
Right.
Okay,
Classic
so one of the interesting questions we have here is about the plans for the debug adapter for VS Code, amongst others. So what are the plans for it? Is it ready for use? And what's the timeline, if there are any?
Yeah, I can take that one. So like the Go Please, we are implementing a debug adapter that speaks the debug adapter protocol. So similar to this language server thing, the editor, as long as it can speak this one protocol, it can support a bunch of different languages. So hopefully this will get debugging support into a bunch of editors and improve the debugging support in VS Code because VS Code uses this debug adapter protocol as well. And yeah, so this new debug adapter is, I think, ready for use. I think we're like basically at V0 and planning on turning it on in VS Code within in the nightly, so in the preview version by default in the next couple of weeks. And we'll be continuing to make improvements to this debug adapter over probably the remainder of the year. So I think this is really exciting, and hopefully it can get this debugging support into Vim and different editors as well, not just VS Code.
Yeah, that is very cool. I didn't realize there was that same kind of abstraction for debug information. That's really interesting.
Yeah, well, actually, I want to add one. So actually, I heard that this new debug adapter, can be used in Vim too. So there is a project called Vim Spectre. And so if you have any feedback, and if you are a Vim user, not converted to VS Code, then please give it a try.
I remember when I used to do C# and Visual Studio Code was Visual Studio was very good, and it was they built the language and they built all the tools and they did a really good job with it, and debugging was just very easy to do. And then I started doing more kind of Ruby on Rails, and I did JavaScript and things, and then I just got into basically printing information out, and now I'm kind of stuck on that. That's how I find out what my programs are doing. I just print things out, which some people think is a bit amateurish. Is it?
I like it, except when it doesn't work. So like it's so if you like put it in the wrong place. Like I did that the other day. I was trying to debug something and I spent hours and I was like, I don't understand what's happening. This shouldn't be happening. And then I realized I just had the print in like the if instead of the else. And I was like it would, if I had been using a debugger, it would have been apparent a lot sooner. So I actually haven't used the debugger with Go maybe once or twice, but I actually really want to get more proficient with it because I also I've also done like C# in Visual Studio, and the debugger was great. And so it's nice for small debugging things, but as soon as it becomes like more than a 10-minute session, I would really rather have a debugger.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And for anyone not familiar, it's basically in the experience is you click somewhere to put in a little breakpoint in your code. You then run your program in a special way, slightly different to how you'd run it normally. And then the IDE will break at that point and pause the program essentially. And you can look at variables and you can tell it to keep stepping step by step to see what's happening to the state and things like that. So it is extremely useful. And there are some cases where it's just, you almost see, because you're jumping around your own code. So you see where the execution is going and you can follow it around. So in some cases, it really is kind of perfect. But yeah, I mean, there's no substitute for just writing good old classic, simple, clean, easy code. But of course, depends how complex it has to be, I guess.
Yeah, and one of the features that won't be upcoming in this debug adapter, which we're implementing with Delve as the backend support, is the log points, which are essentially like allow you to support print line debugging, but as a breakpoint. So you don't end up with, this always happened to me personally, is I would put all these logging statements in so that I could figure out what was going on, and then I would forget to delete some of them. And have to, go, someone would catch them in a code review and be like, oh, oops, that was when I was trying to figure out what was happening. So these log points can essentially prevent you from having to put them directly in your code by setting a breakpoint and having it print out a message. And then you can, though that is never actually compiled into your code. So you don't run the risk of having these leftover print statements. And that's an upcoming feature. It's not yet implemented. But I expect it to be soon.
Yeah, and another nice feature that I discovered was actually a conditional breakpoint. So you can actually set the condition, like in this, like if this condition met, like in go away, then break. So you can actually set this, and also Suzy is adding like a more like a count-based breakpoint, right, Suzy? Yeah, so like the funny thing is, like I also believe that printf is sufficient. Why do we need a Delve or like a debugger? And then now, like especially when we actually develop a debugger, like using debugging tool to debug a debugger, that is really fun and very useful. And it's a complex code base, but like still it's useful and it's doable.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Why am I not surprised that you just do print things? I mean, using Vim and stuff, you've only really started just using a mouse recently. The magic of like Vim that people can do with Vim, when I see it, because I've no idea and they're just casting spells into this thing. And honestly, like I'm blown away by how dexterous Vim users are in their IDE. Okay, Mo, what we got next?
All right, so we're going back to the fuzzing and testing going on there. So we're pretty well experienced already with writing tests, especially in Go with the tendency to write table-based testing. Now, how do we translate this experience to fuzzing and writing fuzz tests and adapting those testing practices of unit tests that we've developed over the years to fuzzing?
Yeah, so this is something that I really love about the kind of design we landed on. It was a really big focus of the UX design that is in the design draft. You can probably just search Go fuzzing draft and you'll find it. And one of the biggest things we wanted was that fuzz targets looked like other tests that people already know, or they can just copy them in. So with a unit test, like you described, you have your table test. Basically, you have all of your inputs, and then you feed it in basically through a loop into your into like a t.run or something like that, and then it runs your test. With fuzzing, it's actually very similar concept, except instead of running it in a loop, the fuzzing engine is what's running the loop for you. So it actually should be pretty straightforward to even translate existing unit tests into fuzz targets. So the f.fuzz function is what you call to basically say, like, this is the meat of the target. And it takes a testing.t. So all of the same things you have in code today, where you can say t.error, t.fatal, that should also be in that fuzz target. And you can actually just copy paste directly from a unit test into there. And it should work much the same. And previously, where you had all your inputs in that loop and you would run them that way, you can instead call them in an an f.add, which is run before the fuzz target. And so you can basically loop through all your inputs, add each of them with f.add, which adds them to a seed corpus, basically the starting corpus that you run your fuzz target against. And then it's just going to run them for you. And so I have this kind of pipe dream that in the future, a lot of unit tests can just be written as fuzz targets, since they work much the same way. And by default, they will actually run the same way, basically. The only difference is you can also fuzz them with just one extra flag.
Yeah, that is such an interesting design decision. And I think it's great. We are very familiar with unit testing, and fuzzing isn't just about random nonsense. You want it to be semi-realistic random nonsense. So yeah, incorporating those two, I think, was really smart move. I think it's really good. We had another question on the debugging stuff. We're going to be jumping around a lot because we're getting questions all over the place. So somebody asked if the debug adapter supported Delve. Is that going to happen?
Yeah, so the debug adapter is actually implemented in Delve, like in the Delve repo. So it's just going to be a different way to communicate with the same backend.
Great. Good. Okay, and there's another interesting question came in. And someone asks, what are the biggest challenges in developing and maintaining the VS Code Go plugin? So, it's used by lots of people. So there's definitely that element of you don't want to break it. But what else is...
Yeah, exactly. Actually, that is the biggest challenge. It's one of the popular editor for Go development. I think from last survey, about 40% of Go developers use VS Code, and I think it was this plugin was introduced in 2015, so it has a quite long history, right? And also Go tool also evolved. Sometime. So what happened is there are a lot of users with a different background and different environment and different taste. So satisfying all these users without breaking already established workflow, that was the biggest challenge. And also another tricky part is we currently don't have any telemetry. So we don't know which, it has a lot of features. Actually, as I develop, I feel, there is this a test generation feature. Oh, there is a JSON generation feature. There is a unit test feature. And there are tons of features, and we don't know which one is the popular one and which one is the most important one we should maintain. So that is one of the biggest challenge. And yeah, so.
Will you be asking people to opt into some program and share that so you can sort of start to get visibility into how people are using it? Or
Yeah, I tried. Yeah, actually, the nice thing about the Go community is yeah, they are pretty open and they are really helpful in terms of debugging or demonstrating their workflow. But still, it's limited. There, for example, there are some users who use ancient shell script to switch Go versions. And maybe we don't know how to use this, and probably I don't want to use that shell script. And then some small change can break this user's workflow, and the user will be really upset, and reproducing will be really challenging, right? So yeah, so we need the users' help to share more about their story, how they develop workflow, and why it is reasonable. Also, another thing is we cannot add tons of feature user ask, because somebody has to maintain, right? And in 1 year, maybe we forgot about this small tiny feature, and then we break it. So we have to somehow filter, prioritize and filter. So if your feature request is not accepted, don't get upset. We try to guide you or help you to work around or find a different solution. But sometimes, we cannot accept all the feature requests.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's for the greater good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned that as the tooling's changed, of course, the plugins and things have to evolve. That got me thinking, with generics on the horizon, does that complicate the Go Please stuff with the language server?
It actually, so that's kind of the nice thing about Go Please and the way that we built it is we use the the Go types and Go AST and all these libraries that are built into the standard library that allow us to parse and type check Go code. And basically, we have one of our team members is currently working on the Go types and Go AST and adding support to those libraries. And so then the stuff in Go Please will just work out of the box. Actually, I think we already have a CL or a CL coming that will handle add some more handling for generics. We may have to do a little bit of extra work to get the completion results completely correct, but for the most part, everything just works out of the box. I believe references, renames, everything like that already just works.
Wow. That's great, isn't it? Dog fooding really paying for itself there.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. So generic support coming soon, or whenever generics come.
Great.
Nice. So I guess now that we as users, we perceive Go Please as almost feature complete. What should we be looking out for in the next releases?
Yeah, so one thing that we've definitely been working on stability and just performance. These are kind of the perpetual things that we'll always be working on, I think. But some focuses that we've had recently have been the new user experience. So just making things a little bit more seamless when you're getting started. Because a lot of times, Go Please doesn't work so well until you have a go.mod file. But if you're a new user and you don't know that you're supposed to create a go.mod file, then it's not really helpful. So we definitely want to make some sort of starter process. So that's one thing that we're sort of starting to focus on. And another big focus of ours has been multi-module workspaces. So something that we've realized over the course of this project has been that a lot of times people want to work on multiple modules at the same time. And Go Please has not historically supported that. And you just have to kind of open each module its own window. And you only get references across that module. But a lot of people want, they want to find references in 2 modules, 3 modules. They have some sort of setup that they want to make a change in a dependency and their main module simultaneously and test it together. So we came up with a feature for Go Please, which we call the workspace module, which basically creates, if you have multiple modules in your workspace, it sort of creates one large top level module that requires all of them and replaces replace directives for all the modules that you that are in your workspace. And so that way you can develop locally. And we realized that we need to have the same feature in the Go command to make it fully useful. Because if you are working in your IDE and then you want to say you run a test and VS Code provides a feature that lets you just run a test from the IDE, then you might have a different result in the test than you do when you run the test on the command line, just because you're using different versions. And so we actually have a proposal now. Michael Matlub is working on it. A proposal for the Go command to add this work file flag, which basically will point to this sort of workspace module that's created multiple modules that are in your workspace. I know that's a lot, so I can clarify
that's
more.
so good to hear, though. It's music to my ears because that multi-module thing. I do a lot of mono repos, so often I want to just open the whole thing in VS Code, let's say, and so that is going to make that whole process much slicker. So yeah, brilliant. Oh, so pleased about that. I feel like that's a gift that was just for me in a way.
Yeah, and you and a lot of people, because we had a ton. I think it was the most upvoted issue we've ever had is the one that was requesting support for multi-module workspaces. So
yeah, brilliant. Well, there you go. It tells everyone, it's worth reaching out and communicating your needs because they're listening. Look, see, it's proof.
Yes, we are.
Yeah. Got another one for us, Mo?
Sure. So the VS Code plugin it has tons of users. I mean, almost all of Go developers who are using VS Code are relying on this extension, its stability and its features. So what are the challenges that you've been facing and working on as you develop and maintain this extension for us?
I think I sort of discussed this before, so diverse a set of users and testing it. Actually, our CI and we have some testing framework, but we cannot actually test all the combination, all the CPU or the environment, all kind of setting. I think VS Code Go itself has about 50 settings, and Go Place has another 50 settings. So testing all the combination is almost impossible. And so to keep that stable and not to break anyone's workflow, we have to test more thoroughly, and that is the biggest challenge.
Do you wish more people had the nightly preview edition of VS Code?
Oh, yeah, actually, I forgot about it. So we have nightly that is released every day, during weekdays. So from the master. So it includes a variety of new features that are not available in the stable version. And also currently not many people are using this, but if you want to see the preview of new features, or you are you want to give a feedback on the new features, or then please try this Go Nightly. This is a separate extension, by the way. To use that, you have to disable Go extension, and we also have our separate channel for communication for nightly users. So we are all ears. We listen to your feedback. So please try it now.
Well, Matt, you said earlier, how can we contribute to the Go community, or people who want to contribute to open source, but they don't necessarily want to write large features? I mean, they can write documentation, but they can also run, nightly tools and file issues and participate in those conversations, because the team definitely reads that. And it's better to know that sooner rather than later if there's a problem. So yeah. That's another way that you don't really have to do anything. You just use your tools as you have been and just file issues if there are any.
Yeah, that's a great point. We have an interesting question that came in. It's quite a specific one. Someone just asks, what's the module mirror and checksum database, and what does that provide for Go developers?
Yeah, so the module mirror and checksum database were kind of important pieces that needed to be built in for modules to make sense for the Go community. You're probably already using them, even if you're not aware, if you use the kind of default settings of the Go command. So when you are running something like go get, and it's going to fetch a module from the ecosystem somewhere, it's actually going to be taking it from, assuming it's a public module, it's going to be taking it from the the module mirror. So it'll shell out to the module mirror, and then the module mirror has basically a cache of a lot of things in the Go ecosystem, and if it doesn't have it, it can fetch it for you, and it can provide it back to you. And what that provides is reliability of fetches. So if GitHub goes down or some origin server somewhere that's hosting your code goes down, you're not going to be basically on the hook for that. So the module mirror has very, very, very high SLOs, service level objectives, and can basically provide that reliability for you as a central place to fetch that code. And then the checksum database works in conjunction with that, so you don't have to trust the code that's given back from the module mirror. So when Go get runs and it gets that code, it checks the checksum, the hash, and it verifies that against the checksum database to make sure that that matches. And that's a global checksum database that people can audit and people can check, and has a lot of properties to make sure it can't be tampered with. So it's kind of tools that work together to provide reliability and security of your fetches.
Yeah, so for anybody that doesn't know, what is a checksum?
A checksum is basically just a fancy word for a hash here. And you can actually see what it looks like if you go to sum.golang.org / is it latest? I should know. Yeah. Is it latest? sum.golang.org / latest. Yeah. That's basically a record that we have. And you can see us kind of giving our own signature of sorts. You can see the number, and you can see the checksum there.
Yeah, so it's basically everything's added up in some way through some algorithm, all the content.
Yeah, it's
and you're left with,
unique identifier for some zip, basically, for the code. Yeah.
Yeah, and so
that sounds very blockchain.
I mean, I don't want to say it's a blockchain because I think that people on my team will get angry, but it's like basically a fancy, it's using this similar data structures in the back end.
Yeah, and the key thing is, like, if something in the source changes, you'll get a different checksum, and that's how you can use it for security, right? To make sure nothing's being tampered with along the way. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you know, I have a book, Go Programming Blueprints, 2nd edition, available in all good bookstores. And someone asked me to sign it once, and I thought they meant go and add up everything and give them a checksum for it. So I was not prepared to do that. So yeah, that's really interesting then. So it's nice because we're getting to the point where we've now been using Go for a good amount of time, and we're seeing kind of later issues come up that were around really, but in a way they've emerged because of the success of Go. So yeah. It's an exciting time. What's coming next? Is there anything we've not talked about so far that's coming up that could be quite fun? Or maybe you could give us an exclusive, please.
I could speak very briefly about the vulnerability database, so that's not entirely my wheelhouse. And it was talked about yesterday in the Go security team's session, but there's a design draft out. You should read about it. I don't have the link, but if you look up vulnerability database Go, I'm sure it will be one of the first things that pops up. But what it's going to provide is basically a way of knowing whether or not you have vulnerable code in your source. I believe it runs with Go audit, but don't quote me on that. I believe that's the way that it will eventually be able to be run. And it's going to be something that is maintained by the Go team that has basically all the vulnerabilities that are in the Go ecosystem outside of, just like the standard library. Most of our vulnerability focus has been on the Go security team is making sure the Go standard library is secure. But this is keeping track of all the vulnerabilities that exist in the Go ecosystem, what versions are affected, and then you should be able to check and see if your code is impacted from that, which is going to be a really cool tool.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Any other exclusives you want to drop?
This is more of a if you want to learn more kind of thing. But on June 17th, I'll be doing a demo on the VS Code live stream about the VS Code Go extension. So if you want to learn about the different features, both language and debugging, that could be a place to go learn more about what you can do with Go development and VS Code.
Great. And what date is that again?
June 17th.
Okay, or in British,
Yeah.
the 17th of June. Just
Yes.
translating it.
Thank you.
That's all right. Yes, well, we're running out of time, but I would just like to reflect on something which I think is important and is kind of awesome, and that is, for women in tech, it's very difficult. It's not, it's not always a pleasant experience, for whatever reason. And I know that the Go community makes a kind of concerted effort to be a diverse community and not be the same as some other tech communities. In your experience, is that the case? Are there things we need to do better? Can you tell us a little bit about how you feel about that? And it's open to anyone that wants to.
It's a tricky question. I think that's like a longer conversation. I think, I think that something that I do like about the Go community is we do have Go values, like language, basically values for the language and how we want to interact with each other. And that applies to like how we speak to each other at conferences. It applies to how we interact with each other on Slack and on even Twitter and the issue tracker. And so I think in general, if you ever want to be a better ally, that's always helpful to kind of call out bad behavior and report bad behavior and try to, if you don't feel like you're the contributor to bad behavior, then at least calling it out is always helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I appreciate that. I mean, it just strikes me, I think, this is a great example. If there are anyone watching that feels like they don't belong in the kind of tech community, I always like to highlight that where we can, because we know the benefits of having diversity in our community, and it's really up to all of us to make that happen and keep it and work on that where it needs work on. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much for joining us and telling us all the secret stuff that's coming up and everything you've been working on so far. This has been really helpful. Thank you to everyone that submitted a question as well. Hopefully you enjoyed the answers. I know I did. Rebecca, Suzy, Julie, Katie, Hannah, thank you so much for being on this. Mo, thank you so much for being my co-host for this afternoon. It was good times.